what I get for thinking. It will. It will. Well, good evening. Certainly good to see each of you here this evening. If you have your Bibles, I'm going to invite you to look in the book of Exodus chapter 16. Exodus chapter 16, I want you to just kind of have a little background on where we're at here in the book of Exodus. About a month has passed between the time Israel departed from Egypt to the time that they reached what we refer to as the wilderness of sin. And if you were to go back to chapter 15, verses 22 through 26, you'd see that water had already been a problem for them. They were thirsty, and now they're at a point where they have run out of food, and they're frightened to the extent that they begin to think about what we like to call the good old days. And that's when they were back in Egypt, and when they used to sing and eat, and what happens is they become discouraged before they'd hardly even gotten started. I mean, they had just gotten started, and now they're discouraged, and they had been on the road only a few days, and because they missed a meal or two, they were ready to go back to the slave camps of Egypt, and the growling stomachs, I guess it's what we call today, they got hangry. Anybody ever been hangry before? Yeah. Well, they were hangry. And those growling stomachs tended to produce grumbling lips. And so I want us to look here, Exodus chapter 16, beginning in verse number 1. We do have a lengthy text tonight. It says, "And they took their journey from Elim, and all the congregation of the children of Israel came unto the wilderness of Sin, which is between Elim and Sinai, on the 15th day of the second month after their departing out of the land of Egypt. And the whole congregation of the children of Israel murmured against Moses and Aaron in the wilderness. And the children of Israel said unto them, Would to God we have died by the hand of the Lord in the land of Egypt, when we sat by the flesh pots, and when we did eat bread to the full. For you have brought us forth into this wilderness to kill this whole assembly with hunger. Then said the Lord unto Moses, Behold, I will rain bread from heaven for you, and the people shall go out and gather a certain rate every day, that I may prove them, whether they will walk in my law or no. And it shall come to pass that on the 6th day they shall prepare that which they bring in, and it shall be twice as much as they gather daily. And Moses and Aaron said unto all the children of Israel, At even, then you shall know that the Lord hath brought you out from the land of Egypt. And in the morning, then you shall see the glory of the Lord, for that he heareth your murmurings against the Lord. And what are we that you murmur against us? And Moses said, This shall be, when the Lord shall give you in the evening flesh to eat, and in the morning bread to the full, for that the Lord heareth your murmurings, which ye murmur against him. And what are we? Your murmurings are not against us, but against the Lord. And Moses spake unto Aaron, saying unto all the congregation of the children of Israel, Come near before the Lord, for he hath heard your murmurings. And it came to pass, as Aaron spake unto the whole congregation of the children of Israel, that they looked toward the wilderness, and behold, the glory of the Lord appeared in the cloud. I've heard the murmurings of the children of Israel. Speak unto them, saying, At even you shall eat flesh, and in the morning you shall be filled with bread, and you shall know that I am the Lord your God. And it came to pass that at even the quails came up and covered the camp, and in the morning the dew lay round about the host. And when the dew that lay was gone up, behold, upon the face of the wilderness there lay a small round thing, as small as the hoarfrost on the ground. And when the children of Israel saw it, they said one to another, It is manna, for they wist not knew what it was. And Moses said unto them, This is the bread which the Lord hath given you to eat. This is the thing which the Lord hath commanded, gather of it every man according to his eating, an omer for every man, according to the number of your persons. Take ye every man for them which are in his tents. And the children of Israel did so, and gathered, some more, some less. And when they did meet it with an omer, he that gathered much had nothing over, and he that gathered little had no lack. And they gathered every man according to his eating. And Moses said, Let no man leave of it till the morning. Notwithstanding, they hearkened not unto Moses, but some of them left of it until the morning, and it bred worms and stank, and Moses was wroth with them. And they gathered it every morning, every man according to his eating, and when the sun waxed hot, it melted. And it came to pass that on the 6th day they gathered twice as much bread, 2 omers for one man. And all the rulers of the congregation came and told Moses, and he said to them, This is that which the Lord hath said, Tomorrow is the rest of the holy Sabbath unto the Lord. Bake that which you will bake today, and see that you will seethe, and that which remaineth over lay up for you to be kept until the morning. And they laid it up till the morning as Moses bade, and it did not stink, neither was there any worms therein. And Moses said, Eat that today, for today is a Sabbath unto the Lord. Today you shall not find it in the field. 6 days you shall gather it, but on the 7th day, which is the Sabbath, in it there shall be none. And it came to pass that there went out some of the people on the 7th day for to gather, and they found none. And the Lord said unto Moses, How long refuse ye to keep my commandments and my laws? See, for that the Lord hath given you the Sabbath, therefore he giveth you on the 6th day the bread of 2 days. Abide ye every man in his place, let no man go out of his place on the 7th day. So the people rested on the 7th day. And the house of Israel called the name thereof Manna, and it was like coriander seed, white, and the taste of it was like wafers made with honey. And Moses said, This is the thing which the Lord commandeth. Fill an omer of it to be kept for your generations, that may see the bread wherewith I have fed you in the wilderness when I brought you forth from the land of Egypt. And Moses said unto Aaron, Take a pot and put an omer full of manna therein, and lay it up before the Lord to be kept for your generations. As the Lord commanded Moses, so Aaron laid it up before the testimony to be kept. And the children of Israel did eat manna 40 years, until they came to a land inhabited. They did eat manna until they came unto the borders of the land of Canaan. Now an omer is the 10th part of an ephah. So when we look at this, we go all the way back to the very beginning, and as we kind of go through this chapter, we see that in verse number 2 says, The whole congregation of the children of Israel murmured against Moses and Aaron in the wilderness. When you hear that word murmur, what does that mean to you? They complained. They complained, and that's what I want us to look at tonight. I want us to look at the idea and the thought that complainers never win. Complainers never win. And I want to see, there's 5 things in this passage that show us about complainers. And the very first thing that we find is that complainers always find something to complain about. Do they not? Complainers always find something to complain about. Verse 1 through 4 here of this text reveals that they had something to complain about. They murmured against Aaron and Moses. They said unto them in verse 3, Would to God we had died by the hand of the Lord in the land of Egypt, when we sat by the flesh pots, and when we did eat bread to the full. For you have brought us forth into this wilderness to kill this whole assembly with hunger. And Lord heard their murmurings and complainings, and decided, amazingly enough, the children of Israel seem to have learned nothing from their past experience of God's faithfulness to them. They clearly had not learned anything of His faithfulness to them, of His care of them. And again, what they do is they give in to self-pity and grumblings and complainings. Yet all too often, we have to admit that we're often faced with difficulties and problems that we can't personally solve. And you know what tends to happen whenever we're faced with those things? We tend to be just like them. We grumble, we complain, we give in to despair. And the truth is that some of us make grumbling an art form. It's almost like it's an art in and of itself. And we grumble habitually. Some people, they grumble all week. They take off one day. They take off Sundays most of the time. Every now and then they'll still grumble on Sundays. We grumble if we are caught in, if you're like me, you grumble when you're caught in slow-moving traffic. We grumble if our meal at the restaurant isn't delivered in a timely manner. There's all kinds of things that if we sit back and look at, that we find that make us grumble and complain. And so I want you to notice with me some of complaining and grumbling. Number one is this. Grumbling is very simply a gratitude problem. I didn't say attitude problem. I said a gratitude problem. It is a gratitude problem. Grumbling comes as a response to our problems in life. Here, they got what they wanted in Egypt. They got out. They were set free from being slaves and in bonds to Egypt. God delivered them, and now they're beginning this journey, and they're in the very early stages of it, and things are a little bit difficult. It's not what they anticipated right off the bat. And so how do they respond? They begin to grumble and complain instead of saying, hey, thank God we're no longer slaves to Egypt. Thank God for delivering us and setting us free. And we grumble because we think that we should experience pleasure rather than pain. They didn't think they deserved this treatment. They didn't think they deserved to not have to miss a meal or two. And it's just how they win. And they thought that they should have, and we do the same thing. We think that we should have prosperity rather than adversity. And so when we don't get those things, we don't get what we want, what do? We grumble, we complain. I would challenge you, whenever you are tempted to murmur and complain, to review your past. To review your past and remember not the bad things, but look at how the Lord's blessed you. Look at how the Lord has been good to you. And unfortunately, so many of us are like the man that said, hey, he said, my car broke down. He said, it cost me $400 to get it fixed. $400 that I did not have. He said, why me, Lord? He said, after all, he said, Lord, I've been better than most. Why are you treating me this way? Why are you letting me? Why are you punishing me this way? Then his TV went out. Then his dishwasher went out. And the clothes dryer went out. And the lawnmower quit working. Even his iron quit working. He said, why me, Lord? Besides that, why at my age should I still be having financial problems? Why can't I be set financially like some others I know who don't live for you? They don't honor you, and yet you've denied me opportunities of position. You've denied me opportunities of financial gain that you've just given to others. Why me, Lord? Anybody ever said those words? Why me, Lord? Why me? You know the old saying, it seems as if though sometimes when it rains, it pours. And when we find ourselves start thinking like that, why me? Why would my car break down and it cost me $400 to fix it when I don't have $400 to fix it? Why would my TV go out? Why would all these things happen to me, I'm doing what I feel like I'm supposed to be doing, this is what we need to do. Sometimes it helps for us to ask a different question. Lord, what have I done that's so grand that you should have blessed me with a car? What have I done that's so grand that you would allow me to have a television? Lord, what have I done that you would allow me to have a clothes dryer? Lord, what have I done that you would have given me a lawnmower, even an iron? Lord, what have I done to deserve such things? And Lord, hey, how about this? I believe that this is something else that we can say. Lord, what have I done that you would permit me to be born in the United States of America, a land that is wealthy and has plenty? What have I done? Why wasn't I born in a poverty-stricken country? Why wasn't I born in some of those other places where we see that they don't have food, they don't have water, they don't have television, they don't have the nice cars with air conditioning that we have? Lord, why me? What have I done that you would bless me with such things as these? See, it's easy to look at the negative. We fail to realize that all those things, hey, you know what? You have a car that it may cost $400 to fix. Some people are still walking. Some people are riding bicycles. You know, we have to look and, you know, hey, how about this, Lord? Why'd you give me good health? Lord, why others at my age have died of heart attacks or crippled by accident or disease, or, you know, Lord, why should I escape ill health whenever there are people that live better than I do that you've called home? People that have suffered loss of family members. You know, I count myself, I don't know that blessed is it, but I'm certainly grateful. You know, that up until the last 5 years or so that I had all of my grandparents. I knew them all. My kids knew them all. It was I count myself fortunate for that. You know, I look around and I see things and, you know, hey, overall my kids are healthy. What have I done to deserve that? Do we have trials? Sure, we have trials. But you know what? Today, somewhere around this great country that we live in, somebody laid their baby to rest. But yet I'm fortunate. We have to count we have to look at those things. And again, when we think of all the ways that God has been good to us, though we don't deserve it, I can't help but to wonder, how could we possibly complain about the difficult times that we have? How could we possibly complain? Because the things that we tend to complain about are really relatively insignificant. Oh, we'll complain about some things that are really insignificant, that go wrong in our life. If we can only learn to count our blessings. I'm very big proponent of the song, Count Your Many Blessings. Name them one by one. Count your many blessings. See what God has done. If you don't believe me, take time sometime and begin to write out all the ways that God has blessed you in your life. And then on the other side, write down all the negatives that you've been complaining about, that you're unhappy about, that you're unsatisfied about. I promise you the good will outweigh the bad. But see, when we begin to look back and hey, it's just part of it, because, hey, grumbling is a gratitude problem. When we're not grateful, when we're not thankful for the things that we have and the things that God has done for us, we tend to complain. Not only is it a gratitude problem, but it's a perception problem. Problem is when we do grumble, our perception is faulty. When you become unhappy and you begin to complain about things. Take, for example, the children of Israel. How did their grumbling and their unhappiness create a perception problem for them? Somebody tell me. What they asked Moses as they complained to him. Look at what he said. And the children of Israel, verse 3, and the children of Israel said unto them, would to God we had died by the hand of the Lord in the land of Egypt. Listen to this. Oh, because it was so good in Egypt, y'all. So good. They cried and begged and asked God to get them out of there. But it was good. Because here's what was going on while they were in Egypt. While they were in Egypt, they said, we sat by the flesh pots. We ate bread we had all the bread we could eat. It was good. Said, you brought us forth into this wilderness to kill this whole assembly with hunger. Oh, they longed for the days now when they were back in Egypt because it was so good. But they failed to realize they're the ones that asked God to get them out of there. You see, when you begin to complain and you begin to grumble and you get upset, you tend to have a false perception of the way things were at some point. It hasn't always been better than what you have right now. Sure, this was a trial. Sure, this was a test. But again, you know, they exaggerated in their minds the benefits of Egypt. They said they sat by their flesh pots and ate all that they wanted. Basically saying, you know, we had a great variety of foods and meats. And I'm just going to be honest with you, as slaves, that could hardly be true. In fact, it probably is not true at all. Imagine they forgot. Isn't it amazing how quickly they forgot the beatings that they took at the hands of the Egyptians? Isn't it amazing how quickly they forgot how they were being killed off, overworked because of the Egyptians, and you know, again, the anguish of their hearts to be free as they did the backbreaking work of Pharaoh. Their perception of imminent danger of starvation was so greatly exaggerated. She's going to get very upset at me. Maybe I shouldn't do it. Lord help me. I'm not going to do it because I'm just not. Oh no, well, it ain't about you, baby. It's about an 11-year-old, so I'm not going to go there. I'll tell you. All right, so here I'll use me. When I was a little boy, something bad could happen. For example, I was learning to ride my bike. Just learning to ride my bike. You know, I got a bike for Christmas. That's a good thing, right? Couldn't be thankful that I had a bike, but I was riding that bike and I was turning in those training wheels and I tipped over. You know how I responded? I got up and I proceeded to yell at that bike and I kicked it about 5 times. I did. If you ever want to see how I act as a little boy, just watch Asher sometimes. He's not far from it. And the only reason I know about that and remember that is because somebody got it on video. I don't know what happened to that video, but it's out there somewhere maybe. In other words, I exaggerated that situation. It wasn't that bad. I could have easily got up and got back on the bike and rode the bike. Here are the children of Israel. They're there. Are they starving to death? No. God's not going to take them out there. But like many of us, I tell you, I told you about hangry. It's a real thing. Because they were hungry. And they were just going to die. It was the worst thing that ever happened to them. I mean, they may have missed a meal and it was just the end of the world. Don't exaggerate your problems to the point that you lose sight of what God's doing. Because whenever you lose sight of it and you begin to exaggerate your problem, you know what happens? You become a complainer. When you're not appreciative, you become a complainer. But you know what else we have to understand? Grumbling is a contagious problem. Grumbling is a contagious problem. And look at verse number 2. And the whole congregation of Israel murmured against Moses and Aaron in the wilderness. Now I'm going to read into this just a little bit. Because it says the whole congregation. That's a lot of folks. That's a lot of people complaining against Moses and Aaron. But at the same time, now I'm going to tell you, they didn't just all automatically agree to grumble and complain and murmur against Moses and Aaron. It could have started with a family. Could have started with just a small group. And I'll tell you what tends to spread more than anything, grumbling and complaining will spread faster than praise. Grumbling and complaining tends to way faster than any kind of positive news. You don't believe me? Watch television. Watch news. Watch what's going on in the world around us. You'll see all the negative, and everybody's upset, and it doesn't matter what side you go on. Doesn't matter if it's CNN, if it's Fox, if it's some of these other, what they all are today. But it doesn't matter which one you want. Nobody's happy. Nobody's doing anything right on any side. Everybody's got a problem with somebody. You don't once hear anything positive about people doing the positive things. Just the negative. Grumbling's contagious. All it takes, and where it's dangerous in churches today, is all it takes is one person voicing about something with somebody else, and they begin to think, they might be right. They'd never thought about it before. But somebody voices their displeasure about something, anything. And all of a sudden now you got the wheels turning, and now maybe they go and talk to someone, and it just continues to spread. Now to the point where people that were happy and people that said they're unsatisfied and they're complaining. They just don't like the way it was done or how it's being done or who's doing it, none of that kind of stuff. Grumbling is a contagious problem. The second thing I want us to see tonight as we look at this text is complainers have already failed the test. Complainers have already failed the test. God responds gently and graciously to the grumbling of the Israelites. Does he not? I mean, he's very gracious, very gentle. In verse number 4 it says, Then said the Lord unto Moses, Behold, I'll rain bread from heaven for you, and the people shall go out and gather certain rate every day, that I may prove them whether they'll walk in my law or not. Lord, God said, listen, I hear your murmurings, I hear your complainings, so here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to rain down bread from heaven. I'll give you something to eat. You're hungry? I'll give you something to eat. And, however, there's a very interesting announcement. God says, I will meet your need for hunger. However, the meeting of that need, guess what it's going to bring with it? It's going to bring another test. You're complaining, you're grumbling, you're not happy with the way things are, you're out here starving to death. God says, I'm going to take care of that. However, know that there's another test. You say, well, what's the test? Look what he said. He said, I'm going to give it to you. He said, you go out and gather a certain rate every day. That means he's going to give them a specific amount that, that they're able to get. And look what he says. that I may prove them, that I may test them, whether they will walk in my law or not. You're hungry, you want food, I'll take care of that. But you can only gather a certain amount every day. Oh, and by the way, this is a test to see whether or not you're going to be obedient to me or not. So they're complaining. It brought about another test with it. And, have you ever noticed that? I don't believe that just to be true here. I believe it to be true in life in general. We find ourselves in the midst of some predicament that we can't escape, and so God says, listen, you've cried out, you want a way out, I'll show you the way. And we accept His answer, His new direction, which introduces us a lot of times into a whole new test. Introduces us to a whole new test, and guess what? Oftentimes trials of different kinds. We were dealing with this over here, and God answered us and got us out of that. Now we're over here, and guess what we have here? We have tests over here. We have trials. They're different than what we had over there. And He delivered us from that, but it brings about a new kind of trial and test. And while we're relieved of one wilderness problem, guess what tends to happen? We gain a new one. We grumbled and complained over here. And we cried out. We complained to God, and God said, I'll get you out of that. Here you go. You just asked to get out of this. You complained about this. And you get over here, and all of a sudden you're like, man, I wish I was back over there. According to verse 4, the daily gift was intended as a test of their obedience. Another interesting thing about complainers is complainers are always looking for somebody to blame. They're always looking for somebody to blame. And here, who do the children of Israel, who do these Hebrews blame? It's Moses and Aaron's fault. They're blaming Moses and Aaron. They accuse them of leading them into the wilderness to kill them. They thought they were only venting their frustrations on a man like themselves. However, the reality is that they weren't grumbling against Aaron and Moses. Who were they grumbling against? They were grumbling against God. Verse 6, Moses tells the children of Israel, says, and Moses and Aaron said unto all the children of Israel, at even, then you shall know that the Lord hath brought you out of the land of Egypt. Remember, they said, you brought us, Moses. You brought us out of Egypt. You brought us out here in the wilderness just to let us starve to death. Verse 6, Moses says, I'm just going to remind you. It's going to be very evident, very clear. I didn't bring you out of Egypt. God brought you out of Egypt. Moses says, I couldn't have done that. God is the one that brought you out of Egypt. Complainers always looking for somebody to blame. It's always somebody else's fault. In verses 13 through 15, we find how God provided for Israel's needs. But I'm going to tell you, what we see in those verses is that complainers are never satisfied with what they're given. They are never satisfied with what they're given. Psalm 78 calls manna angel food. Every morning the angels would bring down this heavenly food and literally spread it before them. And listen, they didn't have to work for it. Imagine that. They didn't have to work for it. They didn't have to prepare it. You know what they had to do? Eat it. That's all they had to do. Eat it. But guess what? They still didn't like it. They still didn't like it. They still weren't satisfied. The manna was described as having appeared in flakes or small round grains. It's described in Exodus 16 verse 31. Look back there with me. It says, and the house of Israel called the name thereof manna, and it was like coriander seed, white, and the taste of it was like wafers made with honey. Doesn't sound too bad to me. sure I've had worse. Numbers 11 verses 5 and 6 records the feelings of the children of Israel towards manna. And it's not positive. If you get a chance, go read that. You know, it's almost like whenever you take and growing up, I'm still a picky eater to an extent. But growing up, I was a real picky eater. And some of the things my mom would make, my brother loved. And I think sometimes she made them for him especially. Didn't really care whether or not I wanted to eat it or not. But I wasn't precious at home, just so y'all know. I was the middle deprived child. But you know, you'd set broccoli or greens down in front of me, even green beans as a kid, and I'd say, ugh, don't want that. Just you can hear, you know, you set vegetables down in front of any kid just about, and that's what you're going to get a negative response. It's not going to be good. You put a hot dog down in front of me, and I'm going to go, no, thank you. You can have that. But here they are. They're complaining. They're hungry. And I'll just be honest with you, if I was ever to the point that they were at, that I was hungry and God gave me a hot dog, I might would eat it. If He said, that's all you got, that's what I'm giving you every day to eat, hey, guess what? Either eat or starve. There were times my daddy would offer to make me a bologna sandwich as a kid, and you know what I'd tell him? I'm okay. I'd do without. I didn't have to do that with as long as they did, but I'm just telling you, listen, complainers are never satisfied with what they're given. It doesn't matter what it is. You could do whatever, and again, having run out of food in the wilderness, so the Israelites feared they would starve to death, and you can only imagine the zeal of which they harvested that first provision of manna, and that was enough manna, it would seem, for every Israelite to have filled his tent. I mean, filled his tent, but in the efforts to hoard the manna, guess what? That was in direct disobedience to God. Direct disobedience to God. It would seem Israel was guilty of two sins. They were guilty of greed and grumbling. I read one article that said a conservative estimate of the total number of Israelites that came out of Egypt would be 2 million. They had 600,000 men able to go forth to war, according to Numbers chapter 1, verse 45 and 46. And so they were instructed to gather an omer. They couldn't gather any more than that. It was to be gathered for every one of these 2 million souls. An omer is the equivalent of 6 pints. And so there would have been 12 million pints, or 9,000 pounds gathered daily, which was 4,500 tons. Hence 10 trains, each having 30 cars, and each car having 15 tons would be needed for a single day's supply. Over 2 million tons of manna were gathered annually by Israel, over and over and over. Can you imagine? That's hard to even envision. Numbers that high. Let me ask you, was God generous to them? Absolutely He was. He was very generous to them. According to verse 35, you know how long He did this? 40 years. 40 years. And the children of Israel ate manna for 40 years until they came into an inhabited land. They ate manna until they came to the border of the land of Canaan. 40 years. Every day, God provided that. To me, it's just absolutely amazing to think about that happening one time, let alone over and over and over for 40 years every day. And the only day that it was not there was on the Sabbath. However, God made sure there was enough on the sixth day, every Friday. There was enough to gather and keep so that they could have it for the next day. Yet they still found reason to complain. Now we can sit here and look at them and get on the children of Israel about their complaining and their grumbling and their greed and so on and so forth. But I'm going to be very honest with you tonight. We're not much different in a lot of times than the children of Israel. We complain. And again, complainers find a reason to complain. They want to find somebody to blame. Hey, and no matter how much they're given, no matter how much somebody goes out of their way to meet whatever their problem is, to meet whatever their need is, guess what they're going to do? They're going to complain. So I ask you tonight, hey, are you a complainer? Truth is, we're all guilty of it to some extent. But we can control it. We can change it. With God's help, we can do better. We cannot be complainers. We cannot, fall into the same category that they did. And as we come to a close tonight, it's not my intention to examine the whole concerning manna. But I do want us to notice a few spiritual applications concerning manna. Number one, it teaches us to look to the Lord for our supply. The Israelites are told that this supply is going to come from heaven to you. I'm going to be honest with you. There's no better place to look than to the Lord for your supply. Whatever it is you need, look to Him. Number two, not only does it teach us to look to the Lord for our supply, but it teaches us to look to the Lord for our daily needs. Manna, how often was manna gathered? Every day. Every single day. They would have to go out and fresh food would have to be gathered. And they couldn't live today on yesterday's blessings. One day a week they could. But if they went out tomorrow, if they went out on Monday and they gathered enough for Monday and Tuesday so they didn't have to worry about going back out on Tuesday and gathering more, guess what? When they woke up the next morning, they was going to be disappointed. Because the Bible said that it was filled with worms and it stunk. It stunk. That's what my Bible said. Sounds like a word we use here in South Georgia, don't it? Stank. It stank. You can't live today on yesterday's blessings. You need to make sure we have some today, and God will do that. We can't live today on gathered provisions of yesterday. Dependence on is a daily matter. Because guess what? Every day fresh problems are going to come up. And every day you need to depend on God to get you through those problems. Third, it teaches us to feed on Christ. Christ is the only secret of strength and blessedness. The Lord Himself founded a sermon on this story in John chapter 6, 22 through 58. In this great story, not only did Jesus feed the 5,000 to provide for their physical needs, but He used it as a picture to present to them their spiritual needs. And He uses a play on words there to draw them back to the story of the Israelites in the wilderness. And here he let them know that God provided bread from heaven. And it's here that He describes Himself as the bread of heaven. He's not there just to meet their physical needs, but He was there to meet their spiritual needs. Listen, does God meet our physical needs? Absolutely. But let's not get so caught up in the fact that He's going to take care of our physical needs that we miss that His greatest purpose is to meet our spiritual needs daily. Daily. Go to Him daily. Just as they would go out and they would gather that manna daily, hey, we need to go to God daily and say, Lord, I need you. I need you. I need your help to get me through this day. No matter what may come, I need you. Amen. Anybody have any thoughts, comments, or questions tonight?